and welcome to Jeff Koinange Live. I am Jeff Koinange, and we are live at the Intercontinental Hotel. And if it's Thursday, you know it's all about inspiration and the story that just refuses to go away. Anyone who's been living on the planet Mars knows that on Monday, Langata Primary School was the scene of some utter chaos. In fact, let's take a look at some images before we introduce our guest tonight. Take a look. So the gentleman you see being roughed up and tugged and pulled and pushed by the police there is an ordinary Kenyan, a concerned citizen who just decided, let me go out and help those folks, those little folks who cannot help themselves. That's all he is. But even before he became famous, for lack of a better word, or infamous, depending on who you ask, Irungu Houghton has made a name for himself. He worked for Oxfam for 10 years and did some amazing work for the African Union, and NAPAD has been honored across this continent. He's also a very inspirational speaker. He's a sought-out inspirational speaker, if you will. He's a very he's also a motivational speaker and a moderator as well. Yeah, sought-after moderator. And at the end of the day, it's ordinary Kenyans doing extraordinary things. For his work, for what he did on Monday, he ended up in jail, denied bail, spent the night in a cell with about 40 other people, was released, and we'll take it from there. His Twitter handle is @Irungu Houghton. Mine is @Koinange Jeff. The hashtag is JKL. Let's listen to the voice of an ordinary Kenyan just trying to stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Irungu Houghton. Irungu, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Jeff.
Goodness gracious, what are those pictures? Look, you don't want to show this picture, but you have to do it for me, please, if you don't mind. Just roll your sleeve up a second, just for a second, because we have to see how rough they were on you, my brother, please, if you don't mind.
If you don't mind, I'll decline, because I think a lot of the viewers are still having their dinner, and I don't want to spoil anybody's appetite at this point.
But your entire arm is just bruised. The scratches, I mean, the gait and everything that you went through, that must have been rough.
It was difficult. I mean, the pain, the pain of being dragged through the gate. I think the tear gassing that happened. I was very worried all the time. Really, not just for my personal safety, but really for the safety of the children.
Yeah. Take us through Monday. First of all, why were you there?
Well, first of all, I think the case of the Langata Primary School has been in the press probably as far back as December. I work for an organization called the Society for International Development, and we are very concerned about promoting aspects of the Constitution. We believe the Constitution is a covenant between the people and its state, and the state and its people. So we have been looking at a number of different issues, and we looked at the issues of public schools. And when this came up, it made a lot of sense to really go as the call was given, to go and play a football match on Monday morning. So that's why I was there.
Yeah, and you get there, and there's this wall, and the kids, and lots of police. Yeah. And then what happened? When did it start going really pear-shaped?
Yeah. Well, actually, before we start there, maybe what I'd like to do first is just to speak to any perceived insensitivity that may be among the listeners, particularly for you parents out there, and I am a parent as well. Some of you may have been left with the idea that children were put in harm's way, and I think I would like to start by saying that for many of us, we were completely shocked by the unexpected and the unacceptable way in which the police used tear gas on the children. And I think that's been said by everybody, including the head of state. So from the outset, really, I would like to just apologize for those who felt really traumatized by what had happened. It was neither the intention of, I think, the school administration, nor the concerned citizens who were there, and definitely not the children.
Yeah.
So I think starting from that probably gives us an opportunity to look at what actually happened. I arrived at about 8 o'clock. The police had swung a cordon, probably about 100 police were deployed to the school, and they blocked anybody who wanted to go into the school, with the exception of students and teachers. And it's only really about 10:30 when the children came out to break and essentially ran at the gate. About 200-300 children ran at the gate trying to get out. And I was very worried initially that they would get hurt against the gate as they tried to pass through the smaller of the pedestrian spaces. So the gates were open, and then they rushed out, and that's where really everything started. They ran to the gates of the land grabbers wall, and they began to rock the gate. So you will see me at some point really quite close to the kids, trying to help them to make sure that the gate doesn't fall on them. And then the tear gas was thrown.
And then it was all hell after that.
Then I think most of the
children, the kids rioting against apartheid back then. And you saw that one young lady, I think her name was, she was in the papers today. I forgot. And it gotten uglier, couldn't it?
It could have been, and I know a lot of people who were watching the images went probably into 1,000 ifs. What if, what if, what if?
Yeah.
I think what's important to recognize that actually there was no child that was hurt in either demolishing the wall or in the actions that they took. The only children that were hurt really were because of the tear gas.
Yeah.
So it was actually quite well controlled and managed, but because of the fracas, you don't really see that.
Yeah.
But the reality is that no child got hurt from any falling debris.
Right.
No child fell over the wall. And therefore we were left with essentially a lot of tears and a lot of trauma, and I'm very glad that actually counselling has been offered by the Ministry of Education. But really the damage to the children physically was very well contained.
Sure. At what point did you find yourself being lifted and dragged and shoved, and taken towards the gate?
Well, my cousins actually have a phrase for it. They said that I started doing azonto at some point as I was being carried out of the gate. No, it happened really when the walls went down. And the perimeter walls, the first internal perimeter wall went down probably about 2 o'clock. And went down very quickly. And then the second perimeter wall, which is the one that faces the road. And actually there was a bit of concern with that wall because the land grabbers had actually destroyed the school perimeter fence. So one consideration was if we knocked down that wall, even if the children didn't get hurt, the concern was what would happen after the wall goes down. Would there be security for the children? And we would not have a group of hooligans coming onto school property, and that way the children's rights would be probably violated. Yeah. So there was a lot of concern about that, and as that wall went down, I just felt the full weight of the police on me, and was then escorted off the school quite roughly. Escorted is a very very decent word. Well, some people say manhandled, others say azonto,
yeah. So you ended up where?
I ended up at Langata police station, and from that moment on, things were fairly civil. I was very surprised. A number of police officers expressed sympathy. They said that their children go to that school, and that they were also concerned about the playground. And we were treated fairly civilly. I was there with Boaz Waruku. Boaz is he's an educationalist, and he's been in education probably for about 20 years. He started the Elimu Yetu Coalition. It's a non-governmental organization coalition, and they've been pushing for universal primary education for, I think it's about 10, 15 years. Yeah. And he's now the chair of the Pan-African equivalent called ANSEFA. Oh. So he's really an educationalist, and the two of us found ourselves in a cell, and that's where we were for 24 hours.
Yeah, but you went alone?
No. The cells had a number of other people, and there were about 15 non-Kenyans, Ethiopians, who were in transition to be deported, and then there were a number of, people with petty criminal offences, including people who had been there, too long, really.
Yeah, so polite. So, what was the night like?
Well, we had a lot of visitors, mostly mosquitoes. They came and feasted for a while. The floors are very hard. We were allowed to bring in a couple of blankets, so that eased the night. But it was difficult. But I think most people haven't missed the coincidence that that day was actually Martin Luther King's birthday.
Yes.
So one of the things that I took, one of the places that I went to really was to really kind of reflect on the life and times of Martin Luther King and really the struggle for civil rights. And I think, you know, what the children did that morning is very reminiscent of either Daisy Butler and the Arkansas Little Rock Nine, or any of the children who really stood up for their rights to desegregate education in the US.
Yeah, in fact, I've just finished watching the movie Selma.
Ah, exactly.
Have you watched it?
I watched it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think all your viewers should watch it.
Nigerian as a star act, as Martin Luther King.
It's excellent.
Right? David Olayiwowo, something like that?
Yep.
Great guy. Fantastic movie.
I mean, one of the greatest things I think in that movie really is where leaders fail to act in time and with and decisiveness. Citizens can actually create a social conscience and a movement that actually causes leaders to be great, and that's the relationship between Martin Luther King and LBJ, Lyndon Johnson.
Baines Johnson, absolutely. Good point, Irungu. So, fast forward to today. And Lands Minister, by the way, I'd invited Mama Charity Ngilu to come on the show because, you know, the star headline today, I don't know if you saw the star headline, I will name the developer and resign, she said. So she named the developer. And, you know, Kenyans are not going to be fooled anymore. And social media is ablaze with the various things who are mentioned as as the developers of this property. Right. But it's not holding water, is it?
No, I think Kenyans are still left not really knowing what's happening, and I think the more that that's tackled quickly and decisively, I think the more the Kenyans will restore their faith in government and the process within which land transactions are taken in this country.
Yeah.
In fact, we need to be a bit careful with this because I think, and I'll say this with no disrespect to anybody whose surname starts with Singh, but the one joke that I did see that I thought was interesting is that really some of the names are missing.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And there are others, man. There are good. There's a hashtag that's probably trending #1 right now.
Kenyans are very creative.
Extremely creative, right? So this Singh wouldn't hold water there. You know, until they name the name, it's not going to really work, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one inquiry that Kenyans need to keep pushing. The other one really is to make sure that all the actions that have taken place, there are about 8 actions that have come out of what took place on Monday, you know, and from the interdiction of the OCPD to the president's statement that his government officers are not moving fast enough, to the wonderful, really courageous leadership action that was taken by the Cabinet Secretary for Internal Security, where he actually went to the school and apologized to the children. And, you know, I very quickly saluted that because I think that really is the leadership that we need to see. But even the leadership I think we've seen from the Cabinet Secretary for Lands to actually go to various schools. From our research at the Society for International Development, there are probably, there are probably 1 in 10 schools that have had cases of land grabs. There are something like 1 in 4 schools that don't know their perimeter walls, or they don't know the boundaries for their school. So this is a really big issue, and I was very happy to hear the commitment that within the next 2 weeks, all 205 public schools in this county will have title deeds, and that would be a real measure of courage, you know, a kind of real award to the courage that we saw on Monday morning from those children.
So you could say basically Monday was a turning point.
I think so. I mean, I think 300 children. There are 900 children that go to the Langata Primary School. At least 300 were on the playground on Monday morning. But really, you know, if you think about those 300, the actions of those 300 children really probably will affect 200,000 children across this county.
Yeah. Huge statement, isn't it? Huge
it's very
statement.
powerful.
Standing up.
Very powerful.
And also ordinary citizens like yourself, because Irungu, look, I introduced you in the beginning. You've done a lot of things. You didn't need to be there, Parliament. You didn't need to be there, but you were there. Ordinary Kenyans standing up.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that, as I was reflecting on the legacy of Martin Luther King that night in the cell, one of the things that still rings with me now is really that, you know, evil persists when good people keep silent.
That's right.
You know, and that silence is a complicity in injustice. And I think, you know, there were millions of us who probably read the story of the headmaster going to the police station, and we did nothing. There are probably hundreds of thousands of people who live and even pass through that school and they did nothing. No Parent-Teachers Association meeting was called. No delegation of people were ferried to the steps of the county of Nairobi. There were many things that could have happened, and this is in a sense why I agree with the president, that there were so many signs that needed decisive public action that were not taken. And what happened essentially is when people in authority don't take action when they need to, really what's left is for citizens to take actions themselves.
Absolutely. And the worst part of it, the irony, this wall being built during school holidays. Teachers' strike that extended to the third week of January. If it had extended further and there were no kids to come out and protest, this wall would have dried up by now.
Yeah, I mean, I know cases. I live in Kilimani. I work with the Kilimani community. I know 2 public schools there that have had their properties taken, their land hived off, and an apartment block has been built on the school property. In another case, a church has actually put up a huge educational complex, which took up 8 acres, and they've been unable to get that back. So once, I don't call them private developers because nobody who grabs land can be a private developer. You can't develop through destruction. That's just not possible. So I think it's really important that we actually take decisive action. And again, I think it's General George Patton had a wonderful say that says, leaders, lead. If you can't lead, follow. And if you can't follow, just get out of the way.
There you go. That's what I say. If you can't follow, get out of the damn way. Look, you think Kenyans will rest with this now that the cabinet secretary has named the Singhs as the alleged owners, or do you think this story is not going to go away, like I said at the top of the show?
I'm not really a prophet, but I think it's probably predictable that this story will continue. And the ownership of the hotel, I think that's also going to continue.
Yeah.
So I think that will play itself out. I'm also interested in kind of what actions are taken to secure public spaces and public lands going forward, because I think if you don't take the judicious action now, then really the actions that were taken on Monday morning will really not have been, I guess, rewarded with something that was worth it.
Yeah.
Let's make this worth it.
Sure. What do you think of the National Youth Service going in and fixing things?
Well, some people perceived that was an admission that the Ministry of Devolution had grabbed the land, and I thought that was a little bit that was stretching the truth a little bit. No, I think what the Cabinet Secretary said and Kaiseri said is that you have 24 hours to remove this property, or to the debris and the wall.
Yeah.
And I think a decision was taken that the children coming to school the next morning should not have to crawl over rocks to get to their playground. So I fully support the action taken by NYS to remove the rocks, rather than waiting for some fictitious, at that point it was fictitious, land grabber to come and remove their rocks. In fact, if anything, I would suggest that the NYS use those walls, use the rocks to actually rebuild the perimeter wall so the children can be safe, and actually no land grabber can come into that. But the other thing I suggested was that the NYS should keep the tippers and the diggers and the lorries. They should keep the engines running, because there are a lot of walls across Nairobi that really should come down as well.
Yeah. In fact, on Peponi Road, right across the street from Westgate, there's another piece of property that had been grabbed for the last, I think, and there were groups of individuals guarding it for some powerful politician, obviously. Yesterday, that wall came down too.
Absolutely.
It's a good sign.
This is what happens when citizens take action.
Irungu, I want to talk more about that after the break, and also your Kilimani projects, what you guys have done over there, because Kilimani is looking pretty good. You guys are, you're making it look pretty good. And what else can citizens do? What else can the people who feel helpless do after the break? My goodness, what a smart young Kenyan who's standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves. Remember this name, folks, Irungu Houghton. His Twitter handle is @Irungu Houghton. Mine is @Koinange Jeff. The hashtag is JKL. We're talking about standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves on this Inspiration Thursday. Jeff Koinange Live takes a break. We'll be back in the morning.